Now, today we're going to be doing a max damage per round build. So, essentially, for this build, we're going to be going up to level 20, and we're going to try to do consistent high damage. Now, the rules are, we'll mostly be using standard array. There'll be a few niche builds where you only want to choose if you roll stats and have high starting stats, but for the most part, you can get away with standard array for these. Now, for my first build, I'm gonna go a little wild. Now, for damage, let's just get a good picture. 100 damage at level 20-ish is good. It's not great, but it's good. It's achievable. 150, that's when you start getting to the higher range, and everything above that is what we're looking for. We want to get a build above 150. That's probably our goal in terms of damage per round. Now, we're going to start with the Beastmaster, and which is notoriously one of the worst classes, or was one of the worst subclasses for one of the worst classes, which is Ranger. But in recent light and a fun little interaction, I think we might be able to actually make the Beastmaster quite a formidable DPR build. Now for race, we're going to start with ASMR. For most of these, we're going to be starting with ASMR. The extra damage equal to your level per turn is just too good to pass up. And nothing really competes with that in terms of just flat added damage. There'll be some occasion where we might want to increase our accuracy with something like Elephant and Elven accuracy or something like that. But for the most part, we're pretty much looking for ASMR as the way to increase our DPR. Now, with Tasha's, we can basically just add the ability score improvements from our race wherever we want, make our highest scores into from 15 to 13 to 17 and 14, with the 17 being our dex and the 14 being our wisdom. We just want decent wisdom at this point. I think dex is about the only ability score that really matters in terms of damage for this build. That said, we will want to look at some of our other scores just in terms of multi-classing. That is about it. You might want to, you can put all the other scores where you'd like, you just want to have enough for multi-class and then decent constitution to maintain concentration as well as just survivability. Now, Rangers at first level, with Tasha's Cauldron and everything as well, get new features. They can replace their almost never used favored terrain as their natural hunter feature, and instead get 3 features, the first being basically free expertise. So this doesn't matter too much for it. I'd probably say stealth, just because getting surprised more often than not will increase our damage. As well as the other one, favored foe, is the switch out from favorite enemy, which basically gives you a free hunter's mark multiple times per long rest equal to your wisdom modifier, and you get to the damage scales d4 to d6 to d8, etc. And while it does still require concentration and starts lower, I think that it's probably worth taking, just because in terms of damage, you'll probably get more value out of it. We're going to get a fighting style, since we're of course a dex-based character. It would be most advantageous to take something that would be along the lines of ranged or dual wielding. But for this case, it's probably best to go with ranged. So in that case, we're going to go with the +2 to range attacks as our fighting style. And then we finally get spells. Again, you could take Hunter's Mark, but we basically already get that from Favorite Foe. I'd probably take things like Zephyr Strike and Hail of Thorns that just are ways to increase your damage, very Smite-like in their behavior. Now, finally, we get to 3rd level. This is where the good stuff happens. This is our subclass. We're finally getting the Beastmaster. Now, there are 2 options for this. We're going to talk about both of them because both of them can get quite high in terms of damage. Now, the curious thing Tasha added was new creatures to count as your beast companions. These are called primal companions, and there's 3 of them. The only one we're going to be looking at is the beast of the land. This is because they get the charge ability, which it means if they move at least 20 feet in a straight line towards a target and hit it with a maul attack on the same turn, they take an extra d6 slashing damage. Now, this is not consistent, but you can probably get a charge attack once or twice around, considering they have a base movement of 40 feet. They only have to move 20. And the others are basically more utility-based. While flying is nice for the Beast of the Air, in terms of flat damage, we're really going to be only looking at the Beast of the Land. Now, I will talk about the other beasts as well. Basically the list of normal beasts of challenge rating 1/4 or less, but that's an extensive list, and we're going to talk about the primal beasts first, just for simplicity. Now, they basically dodge if you don't command them to do anything, and if you sacrifice one of your attacks, they can make an attack in place of your sacrificed attack. You can, this only happens when you have extra attack, and you can only do a maximum of one of your attacks. Now, while we can sacrifice one of our attacks to have the beast make one, we aren't going to be using that just yet, because at this point we can really just deal more damage by attacking ourselves. Because at 4th level we're going to pick up Sharpshooter, and then at 5th level we're going to have extra attack. So at this point our favorite foe is boosted to 1d6, so Hunter's Mark and favorite foe both deal the same damage at this point. Which means just by making 2 attacks, we're dealing an average of 44 damage. This is assuming all our attacks hit. We can cast Summon Beast, but at this point, again, our concentration is better suited with Hex, or Hunter's Mark, I mean our favorite foe, and there's just no spell in terms of concentration that's going to be better than Hunter's Mark. You might want to put down some Cauldron of Arrows. That's just going to be a flat to 46, I believe, damage extra, which is nice, and you can plan it as a trap. But that's basically all you're going to get in terms of damage. Now, 6th level, we get our second feature by not choosing our favorite terrain and all that, and getting Tasha's features instead. At this point, we're going to just get Roving, which isn't great. It just gives us a +5 to base speed, and we can use our normal walking speed for climbing or swimming, which is nice. I don't use movement too much. At least I haven't encountered it too much in your games. I don't know about you guys, but that's not really what we're looking for. What's important is level 7, because we're going to get another subclass feature. Now, at this point, we get exceptional training. Basically, on any of our turns when the Beast Companion doesn't attack, we can use our bonus action to command it to take the dash, disengage, or help action. In addition, the Beast attacks now count as magical, which is great because a non-magic damage is resisted or even immune to so often at the higher levels that this is basically necessary. There are so many times where I'll cast like Conjure Animals or something, and the damage is almost non-existent, especially to things that are immune to poison or things like that. So this is really nice. Then 8th level, we get another ASI. We're going to boost our stats up, so we're going to boost our dexterity to 19, so it's going to be +4, which is really nice. Alrighty, now for 9th level, we get 3rd level spells, which again, actually at this point, things get interesting because we normally can't take advantage of this too much. We do have some flame arrows. It's just a worse version of Hunter's Mark. We have some AoEs like Conjure Barrage. Conjured Animals actually deal a huge amount of damage, but this isn't a Conjure build. We'll get into that in a different detail dedicated to said build. But also Summon Fae, another great spell. We get a ton of great spells at this level. But the real reason why this level is so important is because of background spells. In Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, we introduce 8 new backgrounds which have spells attached to them, mainly being what we're looking for here is the Rakdos Cultist, which has Haste on their expanded spell list. This means as a ranger, we can get Haste, which is incredibly nice because at this point, having Haste is going to deal more damage than if we had Hunter's Mark on. Additionally, this is only going to get better. Just wait. 10th level, we get the Hide in Plain Sight feature, which basically just adds a +10 to your stealth. But using the Tasha's feature, we can instead just get invisibility, which is nice. What next? Well, finally, we get our 3rd subclass feature of the Beastmaster, which is Bestial Fury. Starting at 11th level, when you command your beast to take the attack action, the beast can make 2 attacks, or it can make multi-attack if it has that action. So at this point, if we sacrifice one of our attacks, our beast can make 2. Now remember, if we take the extra attack, we can only place one of our attacks with the beasts, which means that the beasts can make 2 attacks, then basically for an action we're getting 3 attacks. But this isn't just it. We have Haste, which means that we have an extra action which you can use to take the attack action. We can only make 1 attack, but if we sacrifice our attack, since it is a different action, we can have our beast make 2 more attacks. Not only that, but the primal beasts have a fun little function. Now, primal beasts are different from normal beasts because it has added in their text. I don't know why they just did this for all the beasts, but basically when the beast acts during your turn, it can move and take a reaction of its own, but the only action takes the dot action unless you take the bonus action on your turn to have it make another action, which means as a bonus action, we can command our Beast of the Land to make, at this point, a 5th action. So we attack once, then we sacrifice our extra attack for the beast to make 2 attacks. Then, with our haste action up, we sacrifice our attack action from haste to get 2 more attacks for the beast. And then, as a bonus action, we command them to attack again, which means we make 1 attack and the beast makes 5, which is 6 total. Now, at this point, the beast will be dealing more damage, of course, because it can make 5 attacks when we could only make 2. This also works with the bonus action, which means that when we command the beast to make an attack as their bonus action, they get to make 2. So we're doing 7 attacks with haste. Now, 12th level, we get another ability score increase. What are we going to do at this point? Well, we're going to take the Gunner feat. This isn't necessary, but it's a half feat, which means we can boost our dex all the way to 20. And then we also get firearm proficiency, which depending on your campaign, you might be able to not be able to use, but when you're in, you don't get disadvantage from being at close range. Why does this matter? Well, because of a little abuse of the system we'll get into later. So just remember, we no longer have disadvantage if we're in melee range of the enemy. 13th level, we get 4th level spells. Now, at this point, Haste is still going to be better. I mean, we do get some decent conjure spells, like conjure blood and animals, but we can't rely on what's going to be conjured, and we're not going to get better creatures, going to be the same CR, so conjure animals is just better. Guardian of Nature, again, the increased damage is only melee, which we're not, and is only a d6 extra. We get Summon Elemental, which, again, like all the summon spells, is only really good if you can upcast it at high levels, and we can't really do that. Just upcasting Summon Fae at 4th is way better, plus we have Haste, so we're going to deal more damage ourselves. Basically, at 4th level, spells don't give us a lot. I would say just upcast Haste. It doesn't do more, but you're going to be using Haste a lot. And if just having that resource is nice. Now, we're going to 14th level. At this point, we can finally hide as a bonus action. This is one of the reasons why Ranger is severely lacking. But regardless, we move on to 15th level. Our Capstone subclass feature, which is that we share our spells, which means when we cast a spell targeting ourselves, we can affect our Beast Companion if the spell, if the beast is within 30 feet of us. Now, basically, this doesn't really do much for Haste because the beast's actions rely on our actions, so it getting an extra action doesn't matter. We're still going to be dealing 6 attacks total. But it's a nice bonus because they get the +2 to AC and all that. In truth, if we're going in Haste, we don't need to go over 11th. We just want to get that Bestial Fury ability, which basically allows a beast to make 2 attacks every time we make 1. But this can be interesting for another interaction, which I'm going to bring up. Which means basically, so any self spell or touch spell is potentially going to allow us to benefit from this effect. There's a spell, of course, in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything called Spirit Shroud. Rangers don't get it, but if we can, it's a 3rd level spell, which means we still have 5 levels left. We can just go into a class that will give us that. What Spirit Shroud does is basically when you attack an enemy within 10 feet of you, remember, we're ranged, but we do have Gunner, which means we can just attack at melee and still get the benefits of Spirit Shroud. We deal an extra d8 damage. Again, not impressive. At this point, we're doing more damage with Favored Foe anyway, but, which we're not using because of concentration, but it upscales. Not only that, we can choose the damage, necrotic, radiant, or cold, and it reduces the enemy's speed by 10 feet, and they cannot regain hit points. All great stuff, but it upcasts just as Hunter's Mark and Hex do not. Every 2 levels increase, the damage increases by a d8. Now, if we go 5 Folkcaster, and we are, at this point, at 13th level, we get 4th level, which means every 2 levels, we get the benefits of 1 caster, right? So we are 1 into 4th level spells, which means we need 1 more full caster level to be at 5th level. which means that if we take 5 full caster levels, it's going to push, which would go up to 3rd level. We're going to be boosted all the way up to 7th level spells, which means that we can upcast Spirit Shroud 4 levels higher, which every 2 levels increases by d8, to 3d8 extra damage. Now, again, we're only going to be, we don't get our special haste action, so we're only going to have the beast make an additional 3 attacks. We sacrifice our normal action, and then we have the beast. Now, we're only dealing 5 attacks this time, because our normal attack, you sacrifice to have the beast make 2, and then bonus action, we have the beast make 2 more. So, but that's still 5 attacks, which is more than most characters are ever going to get. And each of them dealing an extra 3d8 damage, that adds up. So the question is, what 5 levels do we go into? Now, ideally, I would love to go in the Warlock, because that would get us Spirit Shroud, but these spell levels are separate, which means that we're not even going to have 5th level spells, which means it's just going to deal with D8, and that's not worth it. Which leaves us with Cleric, Wizard, Paladin as the other options. Now, Paladin is another half caster, which means going to that we're only getting 5th level spells, and we wouldn't get Spirit Shroud until 9th level, so we can't, that's off the table. Cleric is obviously the better choice. We have enough wisdom to multi-class, and well, technically, because we only need 13 wisdom, we could have just put our initial 1 point into the 12, making that our int 13, so it doesn't really matter too much. We're more ideal for using other stuff, but again, it's not hugely impactful. So at this point, well, what do they really get us? We are only going to be getting the first feature of their subclass, and the base classes don't have anything that increases damage. Forge Cleric gives us, basically makes our weapons +1 weapons, which means that we're going to have +1 to hit, which is nice for Sharpshooter, and just 1 extra damage. I mean, again, it's not great because we're only making 1 attack as with an actual weapon, but there's nothing else that really increases damage, so it doesn't matter. Pick to your heart's content. Divination is really cool. So is just having the Blade Song up that will help you keep concentration on your Shroud or Haste, so it doesn't matter too much. Just know that you want to go 5 levels into full caster in order to get Spirit Shroud. So let's talk about our Spirit Shroud build first. So we get 1 more ASI, and we're going to take, well, this is still Unearthed Arcana. It's the only other way to get increased damage to the feet. So we're going to take the Degifted Chromatic Dragon, which means for 1 minute, you can make a weapon deal an extra d4 damage of any chromatic type. This is just a little nice boost. You can put it elsewhere. It's not a big deal. But now let's get into, actually, you might want to go Order. The Order basically just allows when you cast a spell on a creature that's enchantment, they can use a reaction to make an attack. Just if you need to put up something, like, for example, if you cast Haste, you're going to lose your action, but you can just have your beast make an attack. Again, there's a few combos here that are nice. The Beast of the Lion's base attack is 1d8 damage +2 plus your proficiency modifier, which at this point is 6, which means it's 1d8 +8 plus 3d6 for each attack. Now, remember, if we move 20 feet forward, we can deal an extra d6. Which means on average, adding all that up, we're dealing 104 damage around with our 4 attacks that are spirit shrouded. Now remember, we get 1 attack. Also, if we choose Scourge or ASMR, since we're already in melee of them, they're going to take 10 damage each turn, so that's going to boost it up another 10. I mean, the weakness about this is you might not want to do Scourge ASMR, because if we choose Protector ASMR, we can fly and still be in 10 feet. So if you can basically be 10 feet above the enemy, chill, hold Shroud up easily, and just rain arrows down. But for damage purposes, well, Scourge damage does deal 5 to yourself because it's half your level Radiant, and then you have it from being Radiant resistant. That you're gonna succeed on that con save. It's not that bad. It's just a DC 10, but that's just gonna be another 10. So if we're adding that in, that's 179 damage. Pretty good, but is that the best we can do? We talked about Haste earlier, right? Well, what if we went that route instead? In that case, you'd only need 11 levels in Beastmaster Ranger to get everything you want. And you don't need to take 5 in Shroud, so what are we going to do with these extra 9 levels? We will, of course, take 1 level in Hexblade. Now, this damage is not consistent. It's going to be against 1 target, and it's only going to apply for the 1 attack we make. But adding proficiency modifier to damage is just too good to pass up. So at this point, we have 12 character levels total. Hexblade is one of them. We go 3 into Echo Fighter. As a bonus action, we can summon an Echo, and basically we can attack from their space, and a number of times equal to our Constitution modifier, we can deal, we can make an additional attack from the Echo space. Now, the thing is, most battles aren't going to go more from a few rounds. So if you have a decent con mod, I think it's fair to say that you're going to get this off every turn. Now, the one weakness of this, of course, is that your Echo has 1 HP, though it does have as much health as you. So it's weak. Now, fortunately, DMs forget about Echoes a lot. They forget where that extra attack comes from. But it's something to be concerned about. Though again, the unfortunate thing about Echoes is that it has to be a melee attack, which means that we're going to have to rearrange our build a little bit. Now, for this, we're basically going to arrange it so we just meet base requirements, 13 Wisdom and 13 Dex. At this point, that means just basically putting our extra 1 point into our 12 to make 2 13s as our stats, and then having 1 17 from that +2. So what does this mean? Well, basically, we are going to put that into Strength. And then instead of taking Sharpshooter, we're going to take Great Weapon Master. Instead of taking Gunner, we're going to have to boost our Charisma by 2 just to meet the Hexblade multi-classing requirements. And then we're going to take our other full boost into Strength. So it's going to be 19. And then we could boost it by 1, or we can take Chromatic Dragon. We're actually going to deal more damage if we take Chromatic Dragon. But then we go 2 into Spores Druid, which is going to basically, as an action, for 10 minutes, we can have our Spores Wild Shape, which has a number of temp HP equal to our Druid level times 4. And while we have those temp HP up, our melee weapon attacks deal an additional D6 damage. Now, there are reach weapons that are melee, which means in this case we're going to go Scourge ASMR and fly 10 feet off the ground and just whack people from 10 feet away. They won't be able to get us most often. The reason why we have to do this is because we are in an incredibly dangerous position. We lose D6 of damage if we take more than 8 damage. We have ways of dealing with this. We have Shield from Hexblade. We have Absorb Elements from Druid and Ranger. And also, it never says your Echo has to be on the ground. So your Echo, well, it has to be melee attack. We just do the same thing. It's flying above. You're flying. It makes sense for your Echo to fly. It makes sense. We're losing 10 damage, but we're making it more consistent. So the thing is, this is all kind of a sad way to increase damage because we're only making 2 attacks, our Echo and then our normal, from ourselves. The rest are just going to be our 6 hasted attacks from our beast. But those are going to be a lot less. So by having 2 really beefy attacks, we can make up for that. Now, how many levels we have now? Well, we had 15, and then 2 from Spores Druid makes 17. Now, I would just go 1 more into Fighter. That's just gonna give us another ASI, so that's 18. Now, we could, depends on what your DM allows, we could go 2 into Blood Hunter, because it's on D&D Beyond, and I've been on some servers and some games where they allow basically almost anything on D&D Beyond, and they approve a lot of Mercer stuff. If there's any homebrew approved, Blood Hunter is one of the most guaranteed, but we can't always guarantee that. So at this point, there's not a ton of ways we can really boost damage with this much levels increase. Like again, we could sacrifice that extra attack. I mean that final ASI in order to have 3 levels left. But the only way to increase damage, well, you have 3 levels left, is the Oath of the Open Sea Paladin, which again is another Matthew Mercer subclass, which might not be allowed, and it deals charisma damage. Fortunately, we can get around this because Hexblade allows your weapons deal charisma, so instead of boosting strength, we can just put those points into charisma instead, and we'll have a full stat. But again, however you do it, it's not the greatest way to increase. We deal 95 damage with those 2, but we're going to be dealing closer to around 80 with all of those kind of weird buffs. So just keep that in mind. We can deal 95 as the maximum in very extreme conditions, but you're probably not going to have Hexblades, of course, all the time. And these take setup. You can cast Spores pre-battle because it's 10 minutes, and you're only really losing 1 turn for prep to activate up your ASMR and then Hexblade Curse as a bonus. But you'd also have to be your Echo. They're indefinite, so you can just put them up and just have them the entire day. So, with that in mind, now we have the 6 beast attacks. Remember, D8 plus 8 damage. And then we get some charge. We don't get any other bonuses, but we make 6 attacks. We deal 65 damage with our beast, plus the D6, twice assuming they can make 2 charge attacks with their amount of movement speed, which is just 7 more, which in total is going to get us to 72, which that plus our 95 is going to be 167. So it's just around the same damage as Spirit Shroud. We're going through all this effort just to keep it consistent. sounds like the build has much to be desired in the way of going Haste all the way. At lower levels, Haste is better, higher Spirit Shroud is. If you're not going to 20, take Haste, it's just a better option. If you go into 20, take Spirit Shroud, it's just more consistent. So, can we do better? Well, we haven't even talked about the other animal options. Sure, you don't get to command them to make an attack as a bonus action, but you still have bonus action free. Not to mention, you're getting animals which are on average more damage. Don't believe me? Well, we have a few animal options which really sort of shine. So we have the cow or deep wrath. They both deal the same thing. So it's as a base damage for the gore, they deal 1d6 plus 4. If they charge, they do an extra 2d6 damage, which again, we're making 4 attacks, or only 2 if they're not hasted. So we can probably get in 2 charge attacks. So at this point, Spirit Shroud looks like a decent option for the cow. What is our average damage with this? Well, it's going to be 14. Now, that is not the only option. We also have the Flying Snake, which deals 1 damage plus 3d4 poison damage, 1 being piercing. This is only going to be an average of around 8 damage, though the 3 die looks nice. It's not really that appealing. We have the Dimetrodon, which is nice because it doesn't rely on the charge. It's just 2d6 plus 2 damage. But the thing about this is that its bonus is only plus 4. With our cow, it's plus 6, and with the giant poisonous snake, as a plus 6 bonus to attack, and on a hit, it deals 1d4 plus 4, which isn't too bad. Then they have to make a con save. On failure, they take 3d6 damage, and on a success, they take half of that, which means they always take at least part of that damage. Now, the con save, again, is pretty low, but we're dealing an average of 13 damage on a success and 17 on failure, which means on average, if say only even 1/4 of that of the damage that hits is going to be a failure, which depending on our enemy level is probably less or more, we're still going to be doing more damage than the cow or deep wrath. So the only issue then is giant poisonous snakes deal poison damage, which is highly resisted. So I would consider either the cow or the poisonous snake. But I would, to be honest, just go with the poisonous snake. Like, you're not relying on charging. Your attacks are magical. And, it just, most of the time, while poison is highly resisted, not all of them do, and a lot of enemies where companions will be most useful anyways aren't going to be against enemies that are resistant to poison. So for my bet, giant poisonous snake. Now let's say we do the same thing as last time. We go into Spirit Shroud, which means we're going to be dealing with our snake 2 attacks. Now we're going to do 2 stats. 1 for the failure, and 1 for the success. Now, remember, we add our proficiency modifier, if they're not the probabilities, our proficiency modifier to the damage roll of the creature. So that's going to be another plus 6 at max level, which means with 2 attacks and Spirit Shroud add to both of them with a success on the 2 poison save, it's going to be an average of 65. On a failure, it's going to be 73. And we also get to make 2 attacks from our ranger, since we have we don't sacrifice as much for the sake. So that's going to be, actually, for this to work, you're going to have to have a bonus action available. So instead of going gunner, you're just going to go crossbow expert, and if you use a hand crossbow, you can instead, if you attack, you can basically make an attack as a bonus action with said crossbow. So that, plus our chromatic, plus sharpshooter, is all going, plus our 20 ASMR damage, is all going to add up to 91 damage from our 2 attacks from ranger. This means that altogether, we're going to be dealing, if they fail their saves, that's going to be 164 damage. And if they succeed, that's going to be 156. And then we can add plus 10 from Scourge ASMR. So that's going to be 166 and 174. Again, this is also assuming they don't have poison immunity. But it seems that no matter how hard we try, we always end up capping around basically 170 is going to be our max. We can't really get above that. But we haven't exhausted all our options yet. We still have Haste instead of Spirit Shroud, which means, once again, we don't have to go all the way to get the benefits of said Haste. We only have to go 11 in, which means we can, assuming we have the same sort of full level 20 character as last time, then we're going to make 4 attacks with our snake, because we make 2 by sacrificing one of our extra attacks, and then 2 more from our haste action. 82 damage if they succeed their poison saves, and 92 damage if they fail said saves. So remember, we have our echo, our normal, and then our bonus. So it's 3 attacks from our ranger, which is going to add up to 131 damage, and then combining that with our successes and failures of the snake, we're going to get 213 damage if the enemy succeeds, and 223 damage if the enemy fails. Now, remember, because of how fragile this build is with our HP, it's not as recommendable. Once again, we won't get that bonus from Scourge because we have to choose a Protector. All in all, again, we're not going to get that full 220. We're going to get something closer to 200 or 190 or even 180 if they succeed, which again is better on average than our other builds because of how much that snake damage increases. So all in all, this is looking like a decent build. We cap out around 170, 180 range with Beastmaster. And all we have to do is pick Haste or Spirit Shroud. Now, again, my 2 favorites are probably just the Spirit Shroud ones, just because they really capture all the features of Ranger, and it just feels more like a Beastmaster build to me. Because early levels, you deal more damage with Haste, and later you get that benefit from Spirit Shroud. So you're getting the full experience of what these two builds would provide without having to take all these multi-classes, which feels a bit wonky. So in my conclusion, we beat that 150 mark with Beastmaster. So way to go us. If you're going to make Beastmaster, I highly recommend doing this build. If your DM doesn't allow haste from the if it doesn't allow you to use the regular backgrounds, just instead multi-class 5 into a full class, and you're gonna get haste anyways. So that was my first DPR video. I hope you enjoyed. Look forward to more, and prepare this not to be the highest we go. Remember, this is Beastmaster. So if we can do 170 damage per round with Beastmaster, think of what we can do with already good builds like Blightslinger and Eldritch Blast. I'll see you next time. This is Dodeca Dungeon.